Isaac Schorr, who happens to be one of these writers over at a website known as Mediate, and happens to think that every war crime committed by Israel is actually Hamas's fault, decided to attack both me and Cenk Uygur in a pretty pathetic attempt at a hit job. Now, I appreciated the commenters on that article because it seems like the jig is up and people know that this was incredibly dishonest. But I kind of want to go through the various elements of this article where I'm being addressed and the claims that are being made about me. Cenk will join us in a little bit to address the lies that are told about him. But let's start with this. So his first line of attack, Isaac Schorr's first line of attack against me had to do with my appearance on Tucker Carlson's show. So before I give you what he had to say about that, I just want to send a message out into the ether. I just want everyone to be fully aware about where I stand on the topic of having conversations with people across the political aisle. I'm going to have the conversations. I'm going to have the conversations whenever I want, however I want, and no one is going to tell me what I can and can't do. I don't care if you're on the left, I don't care if you're on the right, I don't care if you're my mother or father. I'm a 39-year-old woman who has operated in the context of news media for nearly 20 years. And I'm gonna have a conversation with whoever I damn well please. That's number one. Now, here's what he has to say about my appearance on Tucker Carlson's show recently. This was, I believe, last week. Ana Kasparian has demonstrated a willingness to pal around with the far right. Carlson recently released a nearly 2-hour denunciation of 2 Jewish American commentators, Ben Shapiro and Fox News's Mark Levin. So, whatever you might think about Tucker Carlson's political label, far right, conservative, whatever it is, he and I have agreements on US foreign policy. I'm not gonna apologize for that because I've held these views on US foreign policy. I have had a disdain toward neocons and neoconservatism ever since I became politicized in high school. My political views on foreign policy have not changed. Tucker Carlson's have changed, and in fact, he has been incredibly remorseful about the fact that he went along with the big lie regarding Iraq having weapons of mass destruction. I mean, on a regular basis, if you actually care to listen to what he has to say on his own program, he admits I was wrong. And there's something admirable about that. That doesn't happen often in partisan media. So he'll have me on to opine or comment or discuss issues in which he and I have an agreement. That's a good thing, and I'm never gonna apologize for that. Now, with that in mind, when you look at this line of attack from Isaac Schorr, this is worded in a way that would make you think that Tucker Carlson and I got together to attack Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin specifically because they're Jewish, when no such thing happened whatsoever. Isaac Schorr does something that many in corporate media tend to do, which is omit relevant contextual details about the discussion that Tucker Carlson and I were having. So for instance, he omitted the fact that the criticism toward Ben Shapiro specifically, in regard to when I was involved in the conversation, had nothing to do with him being Jewish. Okay, so Shapiro has been attempting to cancel Tucker Carlson over his interview of Nick Fuentes. He is demanding that everyone denounce various right-wing figures who are critical of Israel. He recently did that in the flesh on Megyn Kelly's own tour and lied to Megyn Kelly to her face about what Candace Owens had said about the Charlie Kirk assassination investigation in order to get Megyn Kelly to denounce Candace Owens based on a false premise. There was also the fact that, well, Ben Shapiro went viral fairly recently because he claims that you don't have the right, you are not entitled to continue living in the same neighborhood or community you grew up in. And if housing is unaffordable, well, it's kind of your problem. Move somewhere else. That's what I was commenting on when I was on Tucker Carlson's show. I wasn't commenting on Ben Shapiro's identity because quite frankly, I don't care about Ben Shapiro's religion or his ethnic identity. All of that is entirely irrelevant to me. What's relevant to me is the content of someone's character and what they're saying. And I wholeheartedly disagree with Ben Shapiro when he says that Americans should not feel entitled to remaining in the same communities they grew up in. You know, the communities where their friends and family might be in, the community that they have roots in. In fact, why don't I give you a little taste of what Tucker Carlson and I were actually saying about Ben Shapiro?
But I don't think that we should tell people that they have no right to live in the town where they were born. Like, okay, so who are we serving here? What is the point of this exercise? To maximize profits to you? Like what? I don't know, like what is that?
Well, the first thing I thought of as I listened to Ben Shapiro make that argument was, oh, so I shouldn't have the ability to stay close to my family?
Yeah, exactly.
Like think about what ties you to the community you live in, right? The community you grew up in. It's your family, it's your friends, it's your job. A lot of people aren't able to work remotely. And part of the reason why it's so expensive to live in, some of these cities or the most expensive parts of this country is because whether we like it or not, a lot of the jobs are concentrated there. So Isaac Schorr, what's your problem with what I said there? And why did you write a disgusting hit piece making it appear as though Tucker and I were talking about Ben Shapiro's Jewishness as opposed to what Ben Shapiro argued in terms of housing affordability? What a dishonest prick Isaac Schorr happens to be. Because here's the thing, when you don't actually have an argument, when you're unable to dismantle merited critique of a foreign country like Israel, well, then all you do is smear, slander, misinterpret intentionally, right? Engage in ad hominem attacks. Pathetic. Now, as for Mark Levin, prior to getting to my portion of Tucker's show where he interviewed me, he had an hour-long monologue where the whole point was to communicate to his audience that you absolutely have to do what is necessary to avoid believing in collective punishment. Okay, the whole point was don't become the thing that you hate. Don't become Mark Levin. And now, what did he mean by that? Well, Mark Levin is a disgusting, hateful bigot and Islamophobe. Now, in America, apparently you can hate on Muslims all you want, and you don't get attacked as viciously as people like Tucker Carlson have been attacked for being critical of a foreign nation state. But make no mistake about it, for literally decades, Mark Levin has been a grotesque member of the media who has spewed all sorts of hatred. And the whole point of Tucker Carlson's hour-long monologue was to say to his audience, don't turn into this. Judge people as individuals, not as a group. We don't believe in blood guilt. And he comes from a Christian perspective on that. I grew up in the Christian religion. Maybe that had a huge influence on how I believe as well. But let me just say this. I do not blame the entire Jewish population for the war crimes that are committed by the Israeli government, because I'm not an idiot. I can tell the difference between the two. And I judge people as individuals, not as an entire group. I don't believe in blood guilt. But that's not the case for Mark Levin. So let me give you a little taste of who he is and then ask yourselves, why is it that Isaac Schorr didn't feel the need to even mention how hateful Mark Levin is? Why isn't he writing pieces about how hateful Mark Levin is? Instead, he attacks people like me and Tucker Carlson for finding Mark Levin to be a deplorable, disgusting, Islamophobic, hateful bigot. Take a look.
That's not a warmonger, that's a peacemaker. That is a man who's gonna make sure this generation and future generations are protected from nuclear missiles coming out of the Middle East, from barbarian primitives from the 7th century.
And I'm supposed to, what? Shed crocodile tears for what's going to happen to these people? I'm not. Israel has every right to throw every damn thing it has at barbarians. And if there are innocent people, quote unquote, civilians who are killed, then maybe they ought to organize to take out the government they elected.
The media have been very ambiguous, confounded, and confusing about making distinctions between Hamas and the Palestinians. Hamas is Palestinian. Hamas was elected as a terrorist organization of terrorist Palestinians in Gaza.
So just to be clear here, Isaac Schorr came to the defense of that disgusting, grotesque pig you saw on screen and decided to come after me and Tucker Carlson for having a problem with the type of culture Mark Levin is trying to instill in this country, which is a culture in which we believe in collectivist, hatred or criminality or guilt. I mean, Hamas, Palestinian civilian, what's the difference? Am I right? Do you think you could spare a word or two in your little piece, Isaac Schorr, about the hateful commentary that Americans have been consuming from a grotesque pig like Mark Levin for years? No, you can't? Okay. Well, we know what's actually motivating you here. And then I'm gonna end on this. There's a woman on X. She shows up on my feed all the time. I sometimes see stuff from her that I think is not right. But for the most part, she pops up on my feed. I don't know why X makes her pop up on my feed. I hadn't been following her. But I noticed that she got attacked just a few days ago by that gross Stop Anti-Semitism account that has literally labeled anyone who's ever been critical of Israel even a little bit an anti-Semite. And I don't know why, but they are on a complete mission right now to essentially destroy this woman's life. And to be fair, after looking at her account, yeah, she's said things about Jewish people I wholeheartedly disagree with. That is separate from my interaction with her just a few days ago, which really had to do with the fact that she was being attacked specifically because she struggled with drug addiction. So let's get to the details. Here's what Isaac Schorr had written. Kasparian recently came to the defense of virulent anti-Semite Lauren Witzke. Now, he described my defense of Witzke, but didn't include a link to it in the piece, which I think is telling. Didn't provide any context in regard to what I was defending her on. Because adding a link, by the way, would show exactly how and why I defended her. And I think if you are a person with a heart, if you are a person who has seen loved ones struggle with addiction, if you, like me, had the traumatic experience of witnessing someone who had died of a drug overdose at your front step just a few years ago, you understand the gravity of drug addiction in this country and how many lives have been lost and how many families have been torn apart as a result of it. So when I come across someone who has really made an effort and is in recovery, I want to support them. Okay, I'm able to compartmentalize a little bit. I might disagree with her wholeheartedly on everything. But when I see a human being being attacked for her past, which could lead her to relapse, I want to show a little bit of support. So I literally replied to something that she wrote on X. I don't regret it for a second, but it was a reply. It wasn't a quote tweet or anything. So this weird little creep, Isaac Schorr, is apparently poring over my social media account to see what I'm replying to make a national case about how I'm supposedly supporting an anti-Semite. All right, so let's take a look at what I had responded to. This was her post, Lauren Witzke's post. She's quote tweeting Stop Anti-Semitism, which included a mugshot from when she unfortunately was addicted to drugs. She says, in the last 24 hours, the Zionists and their paid shills have been maliciously attacking me in an obviously organized smear campaign for my past, so I want to use this opportunity to share my testimony. I struggled with addiction all through my 20s with pills, and then she shares her story of recovery. It's a lengthy post, which I encourage you to read. I wanna show you how I responded to it. I wrote, don't allow these pieces of crap, although I used a different word, to get to you. They live off our resources, and yes, I'm talking about Israel, the welfare state that we keep funneling our money to. They live off our resources and have the audacity to insult us. You should feel extremely proud for overcoming addiction. Here's how Isaac Schorr wrote about it though. It's telling. Don't allow these pieces of crap to get to you. They live off our resources and have the audacity to insult us, mused Kasparian. After Stop Anti-Semitism, in an admittedly uncouth fashion, called out Witzke for claiming to have had a Jewish best friend who betrayed her. Oh, no mention of the addiction and recovery and how Stop Anti-Semitism is using her past as a way of attacking her, even though she's currently in recovery. No comment on that, Isaac? Fascinating. I'm sure your readers would really like to know how much you are misleading them in your little hit piece here. You either have an argument that dismantles my critique of Israel or you don't. And obviously, based on this, you don't. So you're just gonna smear people, make things up about them, mislead people, omit important contextual details to make it seem like they're rabid anti-Semites. And let me just be clear. Look, I don't hide anything. I'm an open book. I think it's pretty clear now. I admit everything. I don't like Israel as an ally to the United States. I don't. I think Israel is committing war crimes, atrocities, all sorts of disgusting behavior by this Israeli government and its military that should be condemned. And I can get into details about that. I can cite statistics about that. I can talk about the fact that the IDF's own data indicates that 83%, at least 83% of the people they've slaughtered in Gaza happen to be Palestinian civilians, not Hamas militants. Now, if you want to silence someone like me, one way to do it is to dismantle the arguments I'm making, but you can't defend the indefensible, can you, Isaac? So instead, you just try to destroy my character and my reputation. But again, the jig is up. People have wisened up to the reality of this situation. So these smear attempts aren't gonna work because I'm on the record making abundantly clear who I am, what I believe, how much I reject hatred of all forms, how much I refuse to believe in so-called blood guilt. And your little smear attacks are only gonna make the situation worse for the side you're trying to represent here. So that's all I have to say about this. Cenk Uygur will be joining us for the second hour to address the lies that were told about him.
So we're gonna continue that Mediate attack story against us, and I will have strong words.
Yeah, I wanted to give you space to just address the lies that were told about you, Cenk. And so that's what we're gonna focus on this half of it. So basically you have, he's a senior editor, Mediate senior editor Isaac Schorr writes this opinion piece where he misrepresents both me and Cenk. And in the piece, he tries to argue that Cenk has betrayed a moral high ground because according to him, Cenk has changed his tune on Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. Here's what he alleges: Owens, Tucker Carlson, and their ilk are no longer unfortunate, bigoted stains on Uygur's cause, but design features worth bragging on. Cenk, any response to that?
Yeah, I've got a lot of response to it. So first of all, we've got smear by proxy, right? So okay, they can say that Fuentes is anti-Semitic because he's clearly said anti-Semitic things. So then they go, okay, but then Tucker Carlson talked to him. Now they don't ever tell you that Tucker Carlson, while talking to him, said it is unchristian to hate Jews, and he said that several times. They also don't tell you that when Ana talked to Tucker Carlson, he said 2-3 times, it is against his core principles, it is unchristian, etc. But they literally never say that in any of the stories. And I've read now a couple of Isaac Schorr stories, sorry about that. I wish I could get that time of my life back. But anyway, where he never mentions that. Instead, he just says it. He just says, oh, it dog whistles. Well, how about the human whistle where Tucker Carlson says to his millions of his followers over and over again, unchristian and against the very core of our principles to hate Jewish people or anyone based on how they were born, Okay, so Isaac Schorr is an obvious liar who leaves that out. But to be fair to him, most of mainstream media are obvious liars. They all smear him as an anti-Semite. So okay, now we're at Carlson, but at least he talked about it. Now, Ana talked to Tucker, I talked to Tucker, so now we're on to us. And by the way, don't worry, it's gonna get to you. Anyone who criticizes Israel, you're gonna find 6 degrees of Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, whatever it is. And that's Isaac's job, is to smear everyone who criticizes Israel. And he's not the only one. Alex Griffin does it at Mediate too. Mediate, which is a publication, as everybody here knows, I really liked, right? But it's now just become smear all of Israel's critics and try to ruin their careers. So we have smear by proxy, that's step 1, okay? And by the way, why is he doing that? And why is that a strategy? Because then the next people who talk to us are going to get smeared next, right? So then the idea is, we can take out the oxygen out of the room and we could kill their careers if we just keep doing this smear by proxy until no one wants to touch them and they can't be platformed, they can't be talked to. So he says, oh golly, gee, me cancel anyone? No, I just told everyone you were a Jew hater.
Yeah,
right. So we'll get back to that one.
But that tactic has backfired, hasn't it? Royally so. I mean, it's amazing how no one's learned any lessons from how much voices like Nick Fuentes's have grown as a result of efforts to, censor people who are specific in their criticism of a foreign government. But that's precisely why people like Isaac Schorr are so upset. So I'm gonna give you a little sense of who Isaac Schorr is real quick. These are some of his posts on X. He says, the sad truth is that the Palestinians are not a people capable of self-governance. The 2-state solution, by the way, can you imagine if we said that about Jewish people? That would, first of all, be disgusting. And we would never say it because we don't think at all that any group of people, any religion, any ethnicity is incapable of governing themselves, that they're so inherently flawed that you can't trust them to govern themselves in their own country. Okay, but that's what Isaac Schorr thinks about the Palestinians. And it's totally kosher, it's totally okay to say stuff like that openly, publicly. His Islamophobia and his bigotry is totally okay. The 2-state solution is an undesirable pipe dream the American government pays lip service to. So the State Department employees who think "Imagine" by John Lennon is profound don't have a stroke. Let me give you another example.
No, can I just comment on that?
Sure, go ahead.
So, all right, so that is by definition a racist statement.
Yeah,
right?
he's a racist.
There's no question that Isaac Schorr is a racist. He self-describes. He says the Palestinians are incapable of self-governance. Now, so every ethnicity, race, religion on earth is capable of self-governance except the Palestinians. Again, if you said that about black people, you would obviously be racist, right? If you said it about Polish people or Jewish people, etc., you would be racist or bigoted, right? So he says it about Palestinian people. So I'm not for cancel culture. So I'm not saying Mediate should fire him. I'm just saying it's curious that they don't mind hiring people who are openly racist. That's interesting. And then meanwhile, they claim that just normal critics of Israel are haters of a certain ethnicity. Whereas their actual employee raises his hand and goes, I hate Palestinians. I'm deeply racist against them. I don't think they're not even human. They can't govern themselves. All humans can do self-governance. If you say only Palestinians can, by definition, you're a racist.
And I've said this before, but I'm gonna say it again. People like Schorr, Isaac Schorr, who respond to people like us, who are deeply, deeply disgusted and bothered by the carnage that we've seen in Gaza. The way that he just immediately makes it about the emotions and the feelings of people who are safe, right? The criticism of Israel as they are committing these mass atrocities, that's not a big deal. But the way I personally feel about you commenting on it, that's more important.
100%, they do it all the time.
It's so selfish, so narcissistic and self-absorbed. It really is. And the deflection in immediately talking about like, oh, it's all about my feelings, it's anti-Semitism, that's what it is. Let's talk about anti-Semitism. Let's not talk about all the children whose body parts their parents are picking up from the ground and putting into plastic bags in Gaza. Let's not talk about that. Those parents and their feelings, they don't matter because those Palestinians are subhuman, right? You racist, disgusting prick.
Okay, in fact, there's more from Isaac Schorr about this, so I'll take it from you. I'll go to graphic 12. He says in 2023, the responsibility for all, not some or most, civilian deaths in Gaza lies with Hamas. That's like normal Israeli propaganda. We didn't kill them. The Palestinians made us slaughter them. Okay, fine. He continues, it is the terrorists who are to blame for the horrors to come. So he knows that the Israelis at that point in 2023 are going to commit terrible horrors. But he says preemptively, it's all the Palestinians' fault. They made us murder them. Okay, but let's keep going. Israel will doubtlessly make tactical mistakes as it prosecutes this war, and innocent people will die as a result. That's the tragic, inevitable nature of war, even just war. So good news, Isaac Schorr agrees with Hamas. Or bad news, fascinating news, because Hamas says the same thing. They're like, look, the 36 kids that died during October 7th, the Israeli kids, are collateral damage. We went to go kill the IDF and we went to go kill Israelis, and they were there and they were collateral damage. And so no big deal. And Isaac says the same thing, but not about 36 Palestinian kids, about 20,000 Palestinian kids. He's like, collateral damage, who cares? They're just Palestinians. They can't even govern themselves, they're inferior to us. So of course, and I'm gonna tell you ahead of time, we're gonna slaughter them, and then we're gonna blame them for their own slaughter. Okay, but hold, we're not done. Then in 2024, casualty counts from Gaza are presented beside the number killed during the ghastly October 7th terror attack, as if they're comparing like to like. Ooh, where's this going? So to reduce war morality to an exercise in bean counting, under which the side that loses the most is the more commendable party, is a natural yet woefully simplistic and fallacious instinct. Okay, well, look, if that isn't bad enough already, because he's saying, don't worry about the 20,000, or at the time 10,000 or whatever the number is. That's just bean counting. No, we get to slaughter as many of their kids as we want. But if they ever do terrorists, we gotta murder them, we have to kill them. Okay, all right, so now, but wait, he says, continuing, what so many fail to comprehend is that it can at once be true that every innocent life lost is equally tragic, and that not every life lost on one side of a conflict can be counted as a moral indictment of the other.
He's disgusting. He's like legitimately one of the most disgusting people.
So what he's saying is, when Hamas kills 36 Israeli kids, those kids' lives are precious. And we agree, by the way, that is disgusting, and we've said it 2,000 times on this show. But 20,000 lives, that's not the moral equivalent, because those are just Palestinians. So their lives and their kids are not at all important. That's not morally equivalent. By the way, I'm not a hater, he says. You are, for complaining about all of the kids that my beloved Israel has murdered. So I will call Muslims all sorts of names. I will say Palestinians are subhuman and cannot govern themselves. But if you criticize a nation, a government, I will try to ruin your life by doing a splashy title, Jew hater, Cenk, Uygur, Ana, Kasparian, etc. And he's done that to Tucker Carlson, he's done it to everybody, right? And so, well, we're not gonna take it anymore. So first of all, we're gonna call out and give you the real facts, and you should know that, yeah, every time you see the Isaac Schorr in a title somewhere, that means you're reading someone who's an avowed racist and bigot, and one of the worst people in media, and who thinks nothing of the slaughter of children as long as they're not from his beloved Israel, okay? So now he says, well, Cenk, you changed your opinion on Candace Owens. You thought that Candace Owens was saying things that were anti-Semitic before, and now you say that we shouldn't cancel Candace Owens. So what changed? Okay, that's an interesting question. I'm happy to answer that. So here's a couple of things that changed. Since Candace Owens originally started speaking out against Israel, the genocide got way worse. And now over 68,000 people are dead. And Israel, as we predicted at some point in that genocide, was doing it for land acquisition. And now they took 53% of Gaza, and they're never going to return it. And Netanyahu yesterday said, no, we will never give the Palestinians a state. We will never cede any ground. And today, as I think Anna might have reported on earlier, but Israel is saying no, we're going to now go back to bombing Gaza.
Yep. That was always the plan to begin
because
with.
we were never for peace. We were never for a ceasefire. We were never for that Trump agreement. You'd be a sucker to believe us, right? So, but Isaac is perfectly okay with all that slaughter and all that genocide. So I am not. So so that's one thing that's changed since then. Now let's talk about the second thing that's changed. Candace Owens then started doing not just a critique of Israel, but a defense of Muslims, unlike one I have ever seen in American media. So most of mainstream media smears all Muslims as terrorists, jihadis, terrorist sympathizers. And for people like Isaac Schorr, not everyone, but people like Isaac Schorr, they do it on purpose. So when Israel slaughters their Muslim neighbors and takes their land, you go, oh, that's okay. That's okay, because Muslims are dirty terrorist savages.
They're doing us a favor.
Oh, and they're protecting the Western civilization and Judeo-Christian heritage. Now remember, murdering Muslims is awesome. And when Candace tells you that it's not awesome, that maybe Muslims are the same as everyone else, and that we should also think about protecting their lives and their children and their babies, you go, oh, no, you have to cancel her. No, I'm not gonna cancel her. I'm not gonna cancel one of the few people in American media that has ever defended Muslims, ever, and accurately so. And I'll tell you what, another thing changed. Candace opened my eyes to something I didn't realize. She pointed out this propaganda we've been talking about now, that there's been propaganda against Muslims by American media figures my entire life, painted as terrorists, etc. You know, there's 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. Now, if you did that about Jewish people, you said, look, these settlers that are terrorists, right, that are going around killing innocent Palestinians in the West Bank. You see how all Jews are terrorists and terrorist sympathizers and jihadis. Everybody would be rightly outraged. But they smear Muslims that way in mass, mainstream media in mass, my whole life. And you're asking me to cancel the one person who stood up for us? No, the answer is a hard no, hell no, okay? Every Muslim gathering I go to now, everybody's like, oh, thank Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens for us, for finally standing up for Muslim Americans.
On the right, which is rare.
Yeah, and especially on the right, and they have affected so many people. And Isaac is, my guess is, he's livid about that. If she keeps talking, people are gonna think Palestinians are human. And they're gonna be upset that we're killing 20,000 of their children. And maybe we can't get Americans, force Americans to pay for genocide so that we can get more land. And by the way, I keep saying we, because Isaac doesn't seem to care about America at all, at all. All he talks about is Israel, 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 protect Israel. Anyone who criticizes Israel's a Jew hater and you should ruin their life, right? And I want you to understand something about ruining their life thing, because that leads to the last thing that's changed about what Candace said. So the part that I objected to about what Candace said originally was, she said there's a small group of Jews in like LA, DC, New York, etc., that control X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh, don't do that. Don't make it about Jewish people. That's crazy. That's totally wrong, right? So what's happened since then? It's, guys, as we've said on the Young Turks now, literally thousands of times, it is not about Jews. If you conflate the two, that is going to cause not just terrible anti-Semitism, but it's irrational and it's wrong. Okay, so let me say it one more time. Guys, there's people who are Jewish plumbers and dentists and physics professors. Nobody called them. Israel didn't ask their permission. It has nothing to do with them, no matter how much pro-Israel radical extremists like Isaac Schorr, and honestly, the majority of mainstream media keep telling you, no, when someone says Israel, they mean Jews. They're Jew haters. Because anti-Semite wasn't enough, it wasn't working anymore, so they switched to something more harsh, Jew hater. And oh, by the way, if Cenk's a Muslim, smear him even more, and maybe dehumanize them and do until something goes wrong, right? And so now, okay, but so that's why I thought Candace was wrong about using the word Jewish in that context. And by the way, some of the greatest peace fighters here in this country are Jewish Americans. We've gone over this 1,000 times, right? But are there pro-Israel extremists? So I think her labeling was wrong. But are there pro-Israel extremists in media and in politics that try to cancel anyone who criticizes Israel?
Yes, absolutely,
yes,
absolutely,
of course.
Absolutely.
In fact, that's Isaac Schorr is one of them. There's another writer at Mediate, that's one of them. And it's, guys, it isn't, again, for the billionth time, it isn't about Jewish. So here's an example, right? What do we mean by that? So it's an anti-Semitic trope when you say all Jews are responsible for X, Y, or Z because they didn't do it. It doesn't mean that no one did it, right? So for example, Bill Ackman and Kevin O'Leary, who's not Jewish, have said on multiple occasions and organized letters saying, if you participated in a pro-Palestine protest on a college campus, we're going to put your name on a list and make sure you're never hired on Wall Street. Well, they proved Candace correct, except the Jewish part, because Kevin O'Leary isn't Jewish, and most Jewish people are not in favor of this. These are just the zealots who say that Israel should be allowed to commit a genocide, okay? And that if you complain about it, you're the hateful person. Defending a genocide is wonderful, criticizing a genocide is hateful, and you're not allowed to work on Wall Street. There was a letter that was sent around early on in Hollywood. I mean, these are literal facts, right? And there was an agent, I think Tom Cruise's agent, et cetera, that showed sympathy towards Palestinians who were getting killed. And they're like, no, that's it. She should be fired. Here's a letter. And then here's all the other people who should be fired. Now, that is literal. So is she correct that there are she's not correct that it's Jews, but is there pro-Israel extremists in those places who try to ruin your life? Yes, yes. And then I want to tell you what it means to ruin people's lives. Go ahead, Anna.
I don't want to go too long with this, but I'm just gonna get this out, okay? I have a very simple litmus test. And I'm not really big into litmus tests, but in regard to determining whether someone is a good person or bad person, I question whether or not they value human life. Not just Israeli lives, not just Palestinian lives, not just Jewish lives, not just American lives, but just human life. And if you are out here treating one group or the other as subhuman and worthy of mass slaughter, my test indicates you fail, you're a bad person, I have no interest in you. So when Hamas carried out what it did on October 7th and killed innocent civilians, I specifically raged about that on this show because I value human life. But if you're out there attacking us because we find it loathsome and disgusting and criminal to engage in genocide, maybe consider the fact that you're the bad guy.
Yeah, no, I have considered that, and I'm positive. People like Isaac Schorr are terrible human beings. They're deeply immoral people. They're cheerleading for a genocide. It doesn't get any worse than that. I'm super proud to fight against a genocide. So last couple of things about Isaac. He says, here's graphic 16. The frustrating part of talking to anyone on the quote unquote pro-Palestinian side is that they will not acknowledge the fact that 70% of Palestinians support October 7th. That is a principal, intractable problem at the core of this conflict. One side is stuck in the 11th century. So you see, it's not just Hamas, all Palestinians are guilty and they are barbaric. They're stuck in the 11th century. Now, there's a poll that shows 82% of Jewish Israelis say that the Israeli government should keep going and that they have no problem with the genocide in Gaza and that they want the Israeli government to keep hammering the Palestinians. So that is 82% of the Israeli Jews saying, yeah, I love a genocide. Now, look, I think that poll has some issues, and I showed a different poll that had it at 54%. But either way, a majority of Israeli Jews say, yeah, this genocide wasn't enough. We need more. Now, if I use Isaac's logic, I'd say, oh, then terrorism is okay. Since the Israelis are voting in favor of Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who are clearly like Goebbels, Hitler, Himmler kind of type of figures who outwardly say from the river to the sea, and we're never gonna allow the Palestinians to be free, and we're gonna take all their land and we're gonna kill them, etc. So I could say, well, then terrorism is justified. But I would never say that because I'm a good person. And I don't think a random person in Israel is at fault for their government. And no matter what the polling shows, etc. But you see how he's dehumanizing them, just going, they're all terrorists. Yeah. Who cares? Slaughter them, right? And lastly, today he says about all this. I posted about this on X, and he says, "What a clumsy deflection this is. Nobody's canceling you. You and Ana have been promoting Tucker and Candace. I think that's bad and argued as much in a column. If you could defend your actions on their merits, you would do so instead of throwing this undignified tantrum." Okay, so this is another classic trick. He calls you a Jew hater, tries to ruin your life, and then when you fight back, this is an undignified tantrum. You're throwing a tantrum.
It's far more dignified.
I'm the victim. I'm the victim. Isaac says, I'm the victim. Oh, I'm a little genocide supporter. And you threw a tantrum against me just because I tried to ruin your career by doing this giant headline about how you're a Jew hater. Who would want to work with a Jew hater?
You need to get it right, Cenk. He is a dignified genocide supporter.
Oh, yes,
dignified.
Yes, and so then, but more importantly, go to the point about the cancellation. So how is it canceling? Isaac doesn't have enough power, right? He's a little pipsqueak. All he can do is try to smear people, and Mediate gives him the space to do that because Mediate has turned into, unfortunately, trash, pro-Israeli trash. Every time there's and the thing that Isaac and Alex do every time is, all of the right wing agrees Tucker Carlson should be canceled. He's a terrible Jew hater. And then they have all Israel first guys. Mark Levin agrees, Ben Shapiro agrees, my other buddy from Tel Aviv agrees, right? That's a lie. Tucker Carlson is way more popular than Mark Levin or Ben Shapiro or any of those Israel first guys, but Mediate lies to you and tells you, oh, the right wing hates Tucker Carlson. The right wing has already canceled Candace Owens. That's not remotely true, okay? But they're lying to you to try to make it seem like it's toxic to work with Tucker or Candace or us. So why do they do that? They do that because they want to make sure that nobody does any business deals with you, nobody goes on your show, etc., so that they slowly take the oxygen out of the room. And this is their systematic approach to destroying all of Israel's critics so they're no longer on the air. And then they go, oh golly gee, I didn't cancel anyone. I just told everyone that you're the most hateful, racist person, and that they would be next if they were to associate with you. We would go to them for the smear by proxy next.
Yeah. So
they better not, nobody better work with you, otherwise we're gonna ruin their life next. And by the way, if you think it hasn't had business consequences to us, you're very, very wrong. It has had significant business consequences. I don't mean this article, I mean this constant attack of saying, hey, and there's-
Stop killing Palestinians, please. Yeah. But you wanna know, I'm not gonna stop, okay? Because my guiding light, and I know this is your guiding light as well, is truth and justice, an actual concern about our country, the American people, and what it is that we are forced into funding. And currently, it's essentially aiding and abetting the empire expansion of the Israeli government.
Yeah, so last thing is, I want to be crystal clear about two things. So they'll never get me to hate Jewish people. Now, why? One, I'm not irrational. I don't think that people are born a certain way. Only an idiot and a deep racist like Isaac Schorr would think that, right? And number two, I know you're not supposed to say you have Jewish friends, okay? Oh, ha, 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 yes, so has it been a 47-year ruse with all my Jewish friends? Oh, I can't wait to spring a trap on them, etc. But I also say that I have Jewish family. You know why? Because I have Jewish family. They're like, oh yeah, sure you do. But I do. So do I want people to hurt my family members? No. Do I want people to hurt my lifelong friends? No, absolutely not. And do I want people to violate the very core principle that I have fought for on this show for over 20 years, which is that we are all equal. We are all the same. No, Muslims are not any different, Jews are not any different, Christians are not any different. You would have to be a lunatic to think that, right? And so they're not gonna get me to hate anyone, no matter how hard they try. And they know if you spread more anti-Semitism, that'll help Israel's cause, because then the government officials bought by AIPAC and the Israeli lobby, oh, it's a trope. No, they literally purchased 90% of Congress. So did Big Pharma, so did Big Oil, right? But they did as well. They're like, oh yeah, Big Pharma you can call out. But if you say it about the Israeli lobby, anti-Semite, right, etc., right? So no, we're not going to fall for that trap, and we're not interested in hating anyone. That's the exact opposite of what we do. Okay, and the last thing I won't stand for is, no, I will never bow to Israel, ever.
Nope.
And I want Israel to be a safe haven. I want it to exist. I want a two-state solution, and all of that. But you've got to go back to reasonable 1967 borders or whatever negotiated agreement that you have. But if you say no, you have to bow your head as we do a genocide and take half of Gaza, as we attack 7 of our neighbors and then pretend to be victims, and you have to pay for it. Cenk, you have to pay for our genocide. No, No, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we end that genocide. We end the imperial aggressive wars that Israel starts. And most of all, that we stop funding it. Stop robbing the American people to pay for anyone's genocide. And it's not because they're Jewish, it's despite the fact that they're Jewish. We say, yes, I love you. And again, I grew up in a town that was predominantly Jewish, and et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't mean, since I love Jewish people, they get a special exemption in Israel. They don't represent all Jewish people, and there are no special exemptions for genocide. There just aren't. So no, we're gonna fight to defund Israel. We want to make sure that they get $0 for, I don't want to pay for a genocide. It's that simple. And if you're still supporting Israel's genocide at this late date, this sick, disgusting, mass slaughtering government of Israel, well, you're obviously a terrible person, you're immoral, you're deeply hateful, and you're racist. You think killing Palestinians is no big deal. So now we're super clear about it. But my guess is he'll take this and he'll go, see, anti-Semites. Because one-track mind, smear them, smear them, smear them, smear them, smear them. Okay, and now anybody who calls me an anti-Semite going forward, I'm gonna go nuclear. And not just like rage, I didn't rage here, in just finding out what kind of a deep racist they are and exposing them. Okay, we've given way too much coverage to a irrelevant racist, but okay, I guess Mediate says that they're valued members of their website, and they're gonna continue to keep hiring racists and bigots to smear all Muslims and spread Muslim hate, Arab hate, and racism all over the country. So that's Mediate's decision.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.